Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony, Dr. Carter. I look forward to supporting your confirmation and look forward to working with you. At a point some 2 or 3 years ago, the Pentagon, along with the administration, made a decision to rebalance to the Asia-Pacific. So I want to ask you about that. Would you agree that our challenges with regard to an expansionist Russian agenda, the situation in Eastern Europe and other areas near the former Soviet Union have become more challenging, and that also our challenges in the Middle East are more problematic now than when the decision was made to pivot to the Asia-Pacific?
You're absolutely right. The issues in the Middle East and in Ukraine have developed since we first formulated that rebalance. That's true.
And to the extent that, well, tell me this: how do you understand, as a prospective Secretary of Defense, the rebalancing to the Asia-Pacific will actually work? And can we afford to move resources from Europe and the Middle East to the Asia-Pacific, given the circumstances that we see today in 2015?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. The rebalance to the Asia-Pacific region, as the term goes, is, in my eyes, a commitment to continue the pivotal American military role in the Asia-Pacific theater, which has kept peace and stability there for decades now. It has been that American underwritten peace and stability in a region where there are still many historical animosities and unhealed wounds of the past. It is that stability underwritten by the United States that has allowed the Japanese miracle, then the South Korean miracle, then the Southeast Asian miracle, and today the Chinese and Indian miracle. It is thanks to us that that environment has been created. And in a sentence, I think the rebalance is a commitment to keep that going. Now, you ask, can we do that and keep our commitments in the Middle East and to Europe at the same time? And my view is that we can and must. And let me say why that's possible. I think that while ISIL and events in Ukraine are terribly important in their own regard and require a lot of attention and take a lot of attention. They're on the television, they're in the headlines and so forth, and the Asia-Pacific is not. We have to remember that half the population of the world and half of its economy is in that region, and our military presence there, the naval presence, the air presence, our allies and partnerships, finding new allies, building new partnerships, conducting exercises, those things can be done at the same time that we're doing what we need to do in Ukraine and that we're doing what we need to do in Iraq and Syria. So I think the world needs to know the United States can do more than one thing at once, and we can keep our commitments there.
Is it going to be necessary to move resources from the Middle East and from concern over Europe and Russia to the Asia-Pacific, to move resources? Sounds like you're proposing a continuation of a long-standing, ongoing policy.
Well, it is a long-standing, ongoing policy, but to keep the American military predominance in the Asia-Pacific requires us continually to modernize and add to what we have there. We're adding ships, we're adding electronic warfare, that is, we're improving our forces qualitatively, we're investing in them, a new bomber, which is importantly intended for that theater, which I think is very important. So we're buying new capabilities that won't necessarily have a role in the Middle East or in NATO, but are principally designed for that theater, and I think we need to keep those investments going.
You don't advocate a diminishment of the resources we're spending with regard to the Middle East or Russia and Europe at this point, do you?
Now, I think we need to keep our investments going. When it comes to day-to-day employments, and I don't want to get into too much detail here, but I'm sure you know this. When it comes to day-to-day deployments and the location of ships and so forth, we do move back and forth between the Gulf and the Pacific. And so there is some trade-off there on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of our fundamental investments in new capabilities and remaining ahead of any other military opponent, including in Asia, and in our building and strengthening our alliances with Japan, with South Korea, with the Philippines, with Australia, with Thailand, and new partnerships with other countries like India. We need to keep all that going. It's an important part of the world.
Thank you, sir. According to NATO guidelines, we ask our NATO allies to devote at least 2% of their GDP to defense. This has been a stunning failure, actually. Only 4 countries spent that much in 2013. Estonia, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Greece. Do you have any ideas about how we can do better in this regard?
Secretaries of Defense that I have served for almost as long as I can remember have pleaded with the Europeans to spend more on their own defense, our NATO allies, and with very few exceptions, those pleas have not been fully heeded. One doesn't wish adversity on anyone, but one would hope that when they look at Russia, when they look at Charlie Hebdo incidents and so forth, that the European public will come to share the view that they need to be part of their own defense and continue to play the role that Europe's always played of being a partner with the United States and keeping peace and order around the world. So I regret that they're not spending as much as they used to, and I hope, and again, I don't wish adversity upon anyone, but I hope that what they see around them reminds everyone you don't get this stuff for free. Security doesn't come for free. You got to pay for it.
One would hope. I hope you will, going forward, help us think of perhaps carrots and sticks and incentives to have our allies shoulder their part of the burden. You know, I was talking, we had a great discussion with General Scowcroft the other day, and I asked about what we would do about a Russian invasion or incursion into the Baltics. You know, we are a treaty ally of Ukraine. We were unable to do anything. We were unable to do anything when the Russians moved into Georgia. But with a NATO ally, it really is different. And General Scowcroft mentioned tripwires, stationing troops in the Baltic countries, both from the United States and from our NATO allies. What do you think of that concept? Is it something you've given any thought to, Dr. Carter?
I have, and it's one I support. And I believe it is the intention, again, I don't know this, I'm not in these deliberations, I think it is the intention behind the rotational introduction of U.S. and other NATO forces into the Baltic countries to reinforce deterrence and to reinforce the principle that this is NATO, and that Article 5 of the NATO Treaty says an attack on one is an attack upon all.
Absolutely.
And we need to, that's a very important principle, and we need to stand behind that and show that we're going to stand behind it. And I think that's the meaning of the tripwire concept that General Scowcroft was speaking of.
If we don't stand behind our word on that article, then our word really does mean nothing. How was, let me ask you this in conclusion, how was Cap Weinberger to work for?
I enjoyed working for him. I was not at a very senior level, but what I did for him was advise him on space, missile defense, nuclear command and control, and the early days, in those days, of what are called the continuity of government efforts, which still continue, and we were just beginning to put them together at that time. And,
what do you think he would say about our defense posture at this point?
Secretary Weinberger was an enormous backer of defense spending and of the defense budget, and he was tireless in explaining the need for an adequate defense. And in that respect, he was a lot of fun to work for.
Yeah, he wouldn't be overly delighted with sequestration and with the current funding level and proposed funding level going forward.
Not at all.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.